and thanks for joining us this morning. Welcome to the first Startup Grind of 2022. Today's event is brought to you by Spark Center in partnership with Launch Lab, a fellow regional innovation center in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. During the event, please share where you're from, your company name, LinkedIn profile, anything you want. You can ask us questions. We want this to be interactive. Before we begin, we'd like to thank Spark Center's elite partners, M&P Assurance and Accounting Services, Bearskin and Par LLP, Roughly Insurance, Finance Without Borders, Suresh Law Professional Corporation, and Spark Innovation. Be sure to stay tuned after the interview for networking. If you haven't tried networking on the Hopin platform before, it's fun, easy, and a great way to meet some new faces. A little bit about me. My name is David Robinson, and I'm the founder of Fractal Workspace in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. I grew up in a small town north of Kingston, less than 1,000 people, called Charlotte Lake, in a family business that was largely focused on investment and real estate, but was really passionate about building communities. We were doing lending in places that banks didn't understand, and financing for people to buy homes or to build homes or who were in difficult situations just didn't exist. So my father built an investment fund in the 80s, and I got to be around what it was like to help people get through situations and understand small communities. So without realizing, and I think I had a passion for community, and it wasn't until opening a co-working space that I got that back. So I opened a co-working space. I guess I should talk about the family business, I think family business is amazing. It can be a very good value learning experience. But for me, I always wanted to pursue something of my own. So 6 years ago, I went on that pursuit and started with my own mental health of trying to figure out, why was I unhappy about certain things, which was valuable and gave me a passion for mental health. And I started to look around at businesses that I thought would be interesting. Always loving buildings and architecture and design. I ended up stumbling across co-working. And so I went to a conference in New York City called Juicy, and I got to see people from all over the world that were working in co-working. And there was a passion for what they were doing that I became addicted to. And I knew that I had to build co-working. And so when I started, I looked at other players in the space and I found my own version of it. But coming from a smaller town, I thought, I think I'll do smaller cities. WeWork and all the other players were going after big cities globally, and nobody really was looking at smaller cities. We also looked at where people were living, and we saw that most people were living in the suburbs. So I wanted to build something for employees, workers, that was cool and different. And so it was kind of boutique hotel design and hospitality driven. And I planned on sort of franchising and doing all the things that I was taught in business school. And so we opened up in February of 2019, so 3 years basically today. And we had great success. We had 600 people that came to our grand opening, and there was a demand for a new type of office. So we filled up in 90 days, and we planned up filling up over a year. And so we had a mixture of everything from large scale enterprise level companies to small business to solopreneurs. It was really cool to see the gamut of different companies. 1 year from opening, the pandemic hit. And so the first companies that just sort of sent us an email saying we were out were the big companies. And so it was a very stressful time. And the companies that did choose to stay were the smaller ones that were connected to the community that had made this place a home. And so without them, I wouldn't be here today with Fractal. And so we've survived and gone on during that period to take some time and reflect on what I wanted. And so it's made me realize that success is something different. And I want to be closer to my community and my family and my friends and help people build companies here. So I've made the decision to focus on Kingston and looking at what the ecosystem needs. In the last 6 to 8 months, we've seen a really big influx of companies, new, fresh ones, and we're a little bit more clear on who we are. And so we've seen clean technology companies starting to come in our space, working on amazing innovations in battery and chemistry. And so one of those people that I met was Sebastian, who I'm going to host today. And his story is incredible. He'd been working on battery technology at 17 and 18 years old and building a company through university. So I'd like to welcome Sebastian Alamillo Falkenberg to the stage, who's become my friend, and I'm super excited to talk to him. Hey, Sebastian.
Hey, man.
How are you?
Thank you for having me, guys, and thank you to Spark for hosting this event. It's really cool to see that Canada is also pushing forward on the startup grind and becoming leaders that way too.
Yeah, I think Spark was the reason that we're doing this today. That it's kind of cool. So, because Sebastian's just down the hall, he's here this week working on some projects. So, we've every kind of month he comes down and we get to work on some things. And so, the last time he was here, I got to know Spark because there was a company out of our space that was in their ecosystem. So, I went down and met Sherry and their team, and I was just blown away by what they're doing in Durham. And so, she said she was going to come down, and the week you were here, they were here, and you told your story, and they're like, "We need to get you on Startup Grind." So we're here today because of Spark, and I think you and I are both big fans of what they're doing.
Absolutely. It's very clear that the way that the new direction that the regional innovation centers are going, that are being led by companies like Spark and Launch Lab, it's
Mhm.
the way that the ecosystem needs to go. Collaborative, open. It's exciting.
Yeah, it really is. So today we're going to get to hear your incredible story. I don't know how long we've been hanging out. It feels like a lifetime, but it's only been about 6 months. And so when I started to get to know you and hear your story, I was just blown away. So today we're going to walk through a bit of your journey. I think a lot of people that are on this call are either founders who've been through their own version or aspiring founders. But I think it's important for you to walk through a little bit of your story of how you got to clean technology and what you're working on today.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, where to start, right? It's a long story.
Yeah, okay. So I think we wanted to kind of talk about a little bit of how you got to, being passionate about clean technology, and at a young student, sort of where you eventually, because I mean, you're only 21 years old and have already started and exited a company, which is pretty rare. So I think it'd be interesting to know when you started to pick up on the passion around chemistry and its impact on Earth.
Well, I mean, okay, growing up, I was not I did not think of myself as a chemist. I didn't think that way. I was an artist and an artsy fartsy one at that. So I mean, okay, I always liked the technical side, right? Like I was able to do math. I have a dad who is very, very, very smart and very technically oriented. So he exposed me to, what math can do and why, and exposed me to that rational way of thinking. But I have a mom who is, she now runs a very cool marketing firm, but that has a BA and is artsy and is creative and wants to do things and solve problems and be with people. So I had a really cool foundation of a mixture of two worlds that don't normally mix. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a kid. If you asked me, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have said an engineer because I had a teacher in probably grade 6 named Mr. Hardy who said, when you become an engineer. Did I know what type of engineer? No. Did I know, where I was going? Was I passionate about engineering? No. I was passionate about having a way to pay myself to be creative and
Mhm.
having a toolbox of um, creative problem solving tools that I could build something myself for. But that was secondary to a passion to play music, right? I started playing music probably when I was about 8 or 9, and really dived into wanting to be a part of a band. I'm very fortunate at Kingston, on top of having a great technical and industrial side of things. It also has a great music community. I mean, right? We have history from Gord Downey and the Hip being here, and now Glorious Sons, and there's this really cool underground thing that happens in Kingston on the music side. And I was able to join a program called Rock Academy. Loved it. It was a way to teach really young kids just what it was like to work in a team and work in a band dynamic. And I met some of my greatest friends. I consider them brothers. I'm an only child, but they're the closest thing I got. Um, and yeah, we were really into it. I thought that was going to be a career. I fully dove into it, started branding it, treating being a musician and being a band like now I talk about it in hindsight. I didn't know what I was doing then, but I treated it like a company in and of itself, and I treated it like a brand. And we grew, and we got to play. We got to do some really cool things, but ultimately I chickened out. because I didn't know, I didn't see the path to being able to have some financial freedom and not be the starting nervous.
I still think you're a rock star today. You're just
Wow.
a different version of it.
Different.
So get us to the place where you start looking at, as a young person, clean technology, and I think it's high school, right?
Yeah, really. So on the clean technology front, I I had always been passionate, like I said, about the creativity and solving problems. Um, but I didn't really know where the problems were. So I was an IB student, stands for International Baccalaureate. It's a high school program that allows for a standard of education across the globe. Um, it focuses and emphasizes on global mindsets, but it also emphasizes on teaching you how to learn, not what to learn, because the curriculum for what to learn changes regionally, right? So if you have something standardized, it's more about the process. And throughout that, there's this thing called an extended essay, which is a 10-month research project. It's effectively a thesis. Um, and so through that, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to write about. And like the true procrastinator that I am, the night before I was supposed to submit my topic to my supervisor, I was watching TED Talks just because I felt productive. Uh, but yeah, so I was watching this TED Talk, and they illustrated this really cool vision for a democratized energy grid on in Africa. That if you're building from scratch, you could do it better, and you could do it based on the foundation of renewables. And so it's this really cool utopian idea, and I'm like, okay, awesome, let's do it. Like, what's stopping us here? And oddly enough, this particular TED Talk had a Q&A on it. Still have never seen another one that has a Q&A. And I think the moderator asked, like, what's stopping us? Like, what is the major challenge in between? Okay, price of renewables, awesome, cool. That's been falling. It's on a consistent trend down. It's some metrics I even hear say that it's cheaper than traditional fossil fuels. So great, awesome. It's moving forward that way. And then they pointed to batteries and energy storage technologies. And I was I didn't even realize why you needed it. Effectively, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. So you have to be able to control the fluctuations of energy so that you can deliver constant energy when it's not being developed through renewables. So you need to store it and release the excess. So I was like, okay, cool. That's the problem. That's what we need to solve. Cool. Why is it a problem? It's expensive. Materials for that are very, very unsustainable. You're talking about metals that you have to dig to the bottom of, the Earth's crust to get. And deforestation and land scarring and tailing ponds and ecological damage. It's really rough time when you're thinking about how we get to the materials of things that enable sustainability. And they just can't be big enough. They can't be built big enough because the resources themselves are very scarce. So I thought, okay, what if I could make a battery that used chemistry to be able to, make it out of the most abundant and cheapest resource on the planet? And quick Google search tells you that's salt water. And then there was the rabbit hole. once I found where to dig, I dug, and that was a long journey of digging.
So that fueled you to start playing around with your battery concept, and you took that into university with you. You chose Waterloo, and you took that with you when you arrived at university.
Yeah, so I actually chose my university because I wanted to start a company. So getting into university for me was a little bit funky. I was not a straight A student. Still am not. I don't really test well. I don't really think that way. I like to think big picture, and school likes to tell you test you on the details, right? So I was really thinking I was going to do engineering, like I said, and then I got a concussion through playing rugby, and that set me back. I couldn't do math. Like, I could not think that way. The effects of a concussion on mental health and your ability to think are still very I don't think there's enough research, and I think it's an important area of study to keep going. But yeah, this concussion really messed with me, and it made me think, okay, what if I try and play in this business space? So there was a local bar that I used to play at as a musician called Musiki that I was like, hey, listen, I can make websites, I can make pretty pictures, and I understand marketing sort of because my mom is learning it, and it makes sense, right? Like, just how do you talk to people? How do you get a message across, right? Tell a story, something I'd been doing through music and through other sorts of creativity and media. So it was just an extension of what I was already enjoying, and a way to get paid, right? As a kid. So I joined and I played in the marketing space and I loved it. So I thought, okay, let's go to business school. We're gonna go marketing. We're gonna tell stories, and solve problems that way, and attach on to really cool ideas and make sure everybody knows about them so that they're accessible. But I started to get my math back as I healed, and I started to be able to do this research. And I had, I had teachers that were driving me to push me towards full potential and to heal, to recover. I could have stayed and wallowed in self pity over a concussion, but what fun is that, right? And I had great people around me, and so I had applied to business schools, got in, visited the campuses. One of them was Laurier, in Kitchener-Waterloo, and I was like, this is not for me. It's not the right space. It doesn't feel right. But it was my mother that actually took me to go see the space, to see the campus. And she's like, well, your dad and I went to Waterloo. Like, do you want to see our old campus? And I'd heard all these old stories. And like, yeah, of course I do. And we ended up having lunch in a place called the Velocity Start space. This Velocity Start space, Velocity is the incubator of Waterloo. Very successful, great pillar for the Waterloo ecosystem, and has helped develop it over, I think, now almost 10 years that they've been around. I think they also just hit the $3 billion mark of funds raised for over the 10 years for the companies that have come out of there. So really cool stuff, good guys. So when I was sitting in this space and having lunch, I looked down and I knew I wanted to do something with this technology. I thought it was cool. The math was making sense. It seemed like a solution. And I saw this pamphlet for a program called Science and Business at University of Waterloo. I was like, hey, I can do that. that's a way that I can get the tools to be able to actually accomplish what I want to accomplish. And that's how I see school. It's a place where you can get a toolbox and sharpen those tools. Sometimes, if you don't have a means to an end, if you don't have a goal that you need a certain set of tools, it's not worth it to go. Especially now that you can learn from, my dad calls it Google you. You can just Google it if you really need to get new tools. But if you have a specific goal at the end, then universities and education in general is a really, really cool opportunity. So I was like, okay, that's the program I want to go to. That is what it is for me. And this Velocity thing, it's an incubator. I can leverage this resource. Okay, I got to go here. And so that day, I had a couple of acceptances. I totally canceled them. I deleted my acceptances and reapplied. It was March break, so I was very late as far as students goes. So I reapplied to one program and was like, okay, let's do it. It's better. There wasn't a plan B, so this better work.
It never is.
Right? So yeah, I applied and got into the University of Waterloo, and I felt very lucky. And week one, I applied to the Velocity program, and they liked my idea, and I got to give it a shot.
So you're at your first week of university where most people are partying and just sort of doing things, and you're going to build a business. And so you are now getting into an ecosystem of support. And so walk us through that a little bit. What were your first steps to starting your business?
First steps around starting my business, there was trying to, leverage the resources that were around me. I was trying to just understand the ecosystem, what was going on. Like, I didn't, it's really easy to talk about this in hindsight because I have a lot of experience now. I know what I'm doing. I help educate entrepreneurs around the scale up and starting side of things. But, ask me then, I don't know what I was doing. Like I was just futzing around and going in the dark. Would I have admitted that to myself? No. Did I think that I knew what I was doing? Yes. Right. And you have to have that confidence and security in what you're doing because nobody else knows how to do it better. There might be frameworks, there might be structures around it, but nobody's going to know how to run your company better than you, especially as a young founder. So yeah, we started doing some chemistry in the lab, started trying to figure out how I was going to pay for things. That was a really hard thing to do. Right. And I started to build a little bit of a team. I assembled now a team of friends that my co-founders and the other people around me were all friends and are now lifelong friends. One of them is even my girlfriend, that has become a great partner and support to me, not just in business, but to making sure that I'm a good person long term. Right. So yeah, it was team first, resources second, and then trying to define what are we, who are we, and the tool that I used to do that was pitching. Pitch competitions are incredible first-time founder things. Second-time founders, they can be a little bit frustrating, and I have my own traumas around that.
Yeah, why don't you walk us through what it's like to go through the incubator process?
The incubator process, yeah. So I had a unique experience. Velocity is one of the best in the country, but it was built in, like many incubators, was built in early 2000s or late 2000s. Sorry, around this 2008 app economy that happened. You're thinking about the Spotify's and Ubers and all those guys, those unicorns that have come up, software companies. So it was designed and geared towards software. And I was a clean tech company, really a deep tech company, leveraging science. So that requires a whole different set of skills and a whole different set of supports. And I was fortunate that Velocity had lab space and that the director of what was called Velocity Science then, it's now, I think it's called Concept Science now, since they split up. It was, I was fortunate the director of that was a scientist. And I had some sympathy and some empathy around that. But it was still, the ecosystem in it all was still designed for a company that I could never be. I was never going to grow at the pace of a startup or a software startup. I was never going to evolve the way that software startups go. And the advice that I was getting was to push, rapid growth. And that ultimately, I now in hindsight know is not the right way to do this kind of company. It was not well done for the type of company I was.
Mm-hmm. And so your fundraising was a big part of that journey. Tell us about what it's like to fundraise.
It sucks. Right? You've been in the finance game too. Yeah, I mean, getting anybody, your company is your baby, and it's something you work on and you think about, and it becomes your life. And it's something that I would go to bed thinking about and wake up thinking about, and I'd even dream about it. And to take to that thing that you've put so much energy and so much of yourself into, and then go, hey, please, like, can you believe in this enough to like make it happen? And then go, hell no, what the hell is that? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, how does that feel? Sucky. Mm-hmm. So I mean, right, like that in general sucks. But let's go first in the space that I operate in. Non-dilutive capital is everywhere. So non-dilutive capital being grants or other ways of paying for things without having to give up equity or dilute your cap table. So that is something that needs to be leveraged because chemistry and clean tech is so dang expensive and requires so much special infrastructure. Because I rushed my company, because I did it as soon as possible without really forethought the sustainability of my growth cycle, I didn't leverage all the startup capital that was on the table. I didn't use all the non-dilutive. I should have, right? I get to work with this awesome entrepreneur named Morgan, and she's been working on her technology for almost 6 years through her master's and her PhD, and we kind of back calculated how much funding that she got through the education and academic system through the regular, safe, secure pathway. And it was like $500,000 to $1 million. Like, that's not insignificant. I really should have done that. And because I didn't, it pushed me into have this mentality of, okay, as a deep tech company, I need to grow like a software company. Recipe for disaster. So in my rushing, I tried to raise a seed round. And this seed round, I just got in bed with the wrong investor, really. I thought it was good to go. I thought it was, exciting. And I kind of closed my eyes to the red flags because I said, okay, listen, there's capital, there's money. I need to get this going. So we signed a seed round. It was doing pretty good. And then the day before the check was supposed to go through, or before the money was supposed to be transferred, he pulled out ultimately. And regardless of any signed papers, regardless of anything around that, no money. But I had already made decisions. I had already hired people. I had already purchased things on credit. I'd already leveraged myself so much that I was screwed. I didn't consider it. I didn't account the risks that I was taking on. And that really was a hard time. Eventually, we, honed the pitch. We understood our market. We understood what we were doing. We crawled ourselves along. And we were able to raise money. But it was a really, really hard financial time for me personally and for the company.
And so you took it on the journey to an exit, and walk us through a little bit more of that to, the exit.
Well, the exit was brought on. I didn't want to exit going into it like this. So the company was developing energy storage solutions, but the goal, what I was trying to do, the problem I was trying to solve was renewable energy writ large. So many facets to that. I thought we were going to be a company that had every solution in one spot. So we actually, even from its inception, set up a bit of a creative business structure, corporate structure, where Phospho Power Group was a parent company and had subsidiaries under it. So we actually had Phospho Power Group, and then we had the Ocean Battery, which had IP around the battery technology and was fundraised for separate and independently. We had Phospho Solar, we had Phospho Wind, and we had Phospho Bio at one point to work on some biogas stuff that was happening and try to leverage that. So there was a much larger vision to try to make renewables the primary source of energy generation for the world. And
you weren't trying to flip a company. You had Phospho Power Group, which was an alternative energy firm that one aspect of it was battery.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And so this big honking thing, I thought I was gonna build forever and make something big out of it. But that fundraising experience and the politics and the having to spend my energy where it wasn't worth it in my ecosystem, and to be led on a goose chase where clean tech was still a bad word. When I was developing a clean tech company, it was thought of, why would you develop a company with a social good? There's no point. It's not profitable. Right? Like, that was the attitude. It completely destroyed me as a person. It led me to situations where I was working too hard. I was abusing substances because that was an easy escape. Right? Like, my mental health was down the crapper. I imploded my relationship with the girlfriend I had at the time and with my family. It was a really, really negative thing, isolating thing to be the entrepreneur and to be the founder CEO, especially a young one that didn't know what they were doing. So yeah, like by the time I got to 2020, I just wanted to look for the quickest door. Like, where the hell can I get out of this thing so that everybody gets paid? Like, I have no debts, and somehow this looks like it worked out. And it gets the technology, the cool tech that we developed does not disappear, because I still believed in the vision of cool tech helping the world in one way or another. So we looked for an exit. We found some partners. KPM was actually helping us develop our technology for a little bit there. KPM is the company I work at now, Kingston Process Metallurgy. They're a 20-year-old chemical process development firm that has worked with multinationals and startups alike. Happy to talk a little bit more about them later, because it involves a lot of the work that I do now. But they took it on and were helping us a little bit, and really gave us another breath of wind to do early validation and understand what was going on. But we worked on the tech, and we worked on the business side, and we lined up an exit and got it through for all the different parts separately. And again, because I was so blinded by the need to rush, so blinded for the sprint to the door, I didn't see any of the red flags, and I didn't cover my downside. I didn't cover my risks, or hedge my bets here. So a week before the cash was supposed to transfer again, after 6 months of us ramping down operations and not looking to fundraise or do anything, no further development, just trying to exit, they pulled out of the deal, regardless of a signed contract. And it was the same situation all over again. If I felt it, it was a mistake that I don't think I learned from the first time.
So those are all the lessons that you've learned, and then you start thinking about an ecosystem that you'd like to build in Kingston. And you, I think, start to work closer with KPM, and see how they're such a key part of clean technology companies that's needed to validate technology, to build facilities. So I guess we're going to move into the next stage, where you're sort of closed the door on your company. Tell us about what the next stage was for you, and what you're moving towards.
Yeah, well, like, I had a reasonably, the one part fell through, but there was enough of the other parts, right? Because I had kind of created some stability around myself, and because I was operating on such a large vision, I was able to actually see a little bit of success and get rid of some of the parts to be able to come out of it in a debt-free way. So I felt successful, but it also felt like a slap in the face, right? So I kind of took some time and tried to examine what was going on, what created that situation, and how can I make it so that no other entrepreneur has to experience what I experienced, both from an ecosystem perspective and from just a personal perspective. I learned lessons the hard way. Not everybody has to. So how can I work on that? And so I was working with KPM, and the real challenge that I saw was on the technology side. There isn't a lot of good work being done in the technology side of startups in the clean tech space. So many resources for business. Business development in clean tech is great. You have firms like Foresight Canada that deliver clean tech scale-up business services across the country. You have, more specialized firms like the Center for Social Innovation that provide, services and understanding around the more social impact side of business development to create sustainable businesses, instead of just businesses with a mission that go off and get stuck or worse, die. So, you see a lot of great things happening in the space, but not much on the technical side, except for a firm called Green Center Canada that focuses. They've moved into more of the acceleration later stage stuff, but they're still quite early on this, on your pathway to going from idea to math to, a bench scale pilot version of something that fits on a little beaker, and then you go and you do something a little bit bigger, and maybe it fits on a table, and you go and fits in a room, and now it fits in a whole building, right? Like that's how chemistry goes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a clear valley of death that starts the moment you get bigger than the tabletop. And there's no money from a grant perspective to help you get there. And there are very few programs to be able to help you understand what you need from a business side and a technical side on how to get there. So I thought, okay, KPM has 40,000 square feet of infrastructure. It has more than 40 full-time chemists and chemical engineers. It has the expertise. It has the experience, 20 years of developing, and one of those companies being Li-Cycle, a company that came to KPM in 2017 with a process flow sheet and an idea, and was able to commercialize through to their full IPO exit in 2020 for 1.6 billion. That's not that unicorn story isn't isolated. There's also the metals company that exited the same year for I think like 2.9. So you have $4 billion in value created just from the technology that KPM was supporting. So I saw good people there, and a willingness and a drive to do cool things in science for the betterment of the planet. Cool. Let's take that. Let's package it. Let's make it in a way that is accessible to startups. And that's what KPM-Accelerate is. It's now one of the largest Chemtech accelerators in North America. We partner with companies all over the world. And I'm fortunate enough that we have somebody in Nigeria that I'm working with. We have companies in New Zealand. We have some in Kingston, but we also have some in Boston as well, right? So get to work everywhere and partner with all of the business service providers and other incubators and accelerators to work alongside them, to collaborate. We help the tech, you guys help the business. Together, we'll build a better company, right? So this venture building and collaborative model, that's what we get to work on. And it feels great.
And that's kind of what you and I have been working together on, is looking at Kingston and how we can pull the players together and apply. The way you and I met was we hosted an event where you brought in founders to find out what they were saying, and we were hearing that obviously capital in Canada is limited. VC is not as strong as it is in the US. Lab space, and then residence is place to live. So we've been working on that and trying to find places that it might work. So it's been super exciting. You're also in a co-working space, so I think you see the value of somebody kind of pulling the community together, which is, I guess, the part that I like. So I've been fortunate enough that you told me along in this exciting journey, because I like finding ways to get people to collaborate. And
Right.
I think that's something you believe in also. So KPM-Accelerate is what you're working on now. You're finishing up your degree, but that's the next big push for you over the next few years is KPM-Accelerate. So have you told us enough about that, or should we move into the next phase, or what?
Well, you know what? If people have questions, they're always willing to put questions in the chat.
So
KPM-Accelerate kind of just fits one area of what I get to do now, right? Mm-hmm. So being in the ecosystem, if you focus on just one thing, if you focus on just being the incubator or just being the person that runs the show in one way or another, you're going to forget about A, where you came from, B, where things are going on, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to be in a whole bunch of different places. So that's why I have the other roles that I have. But I see we have a question here.
Yeah. So Kayla says, great story, Sebastian. Thanks for sharing. My first question is, at what point in your startup journey did you realize you had a saleable product? What mathematics/research went into the process?
Good point. So this is a tool called TechnoEconomic Analysis. I'm laughing because anybody who knows me on the technical side will know that I like this word a lot and this process a lot. It is the process of understanding the process model. So how your inputs and outputs make sense and how they connect, where everything goes. In chemistry, you can rely on the conservation of mass and the conservation of energy. Energy cannot disappear. Matter cannot disappear. So you know where everything goes, and you can then link costs to the outputs and the input, or the outputs and the inputs, and you can link revenues to the outputs and the inputs. And then once you understand generally what kind of capex is required to make that thing happen. So if you're shredding batteries, you need a battery shredder. How much does that cost, and what does it look like? Well, then you have revenue potential from the saleable parts. You have OpEx, and you have a capex estimation. And then if you look at the technology side of things, you can look at the individual variables and then put them and understand where the risks are, try to quantify that. If you have all those, you have a DCF, and that's how you communicate value to people, discounted cash flow, right? So all of those parts together, it's at the interface of two different disciplines. It's at the interface of science and of finance. And that's the kind of math, that's the kind of process that I get to do on a daily basis and get to, teach and work with people on. But that's, that interface thing, that dual discipline side of things is not unique. It happens all over the place in deep tech, and it's critical for deep tech to be able to move forward.
That's what you help companies do.
Yeah, ultimately.
Yep. Okay, so you're now back in Kingston on some scale, and you're looking at the opportunity that we have in Kingston. Why don't you talk a little bit about the ecosystem that you envision hopefully building here in Kingston?
Well, I mean, the ecosystem's a big thing, right? Like it needs to be made up of different parts, and that's why I've spent the last 2 years trying to learn all the different parts. I surrounded myself with as many mentors as I could to learn from. Something I didn't do the first time around as an entrepreneur, and learning from those mistakes. So putting myself around people has been critical to learn. And then I put myself in positions where I want to do things better. So I never had, through the entrepreneurship ecosystem that I was involved with, I never had a mentor or a startup advisor that got it, that understood what I was trying to do from a technical perspective. So I joined Foresight, and I joined the Center for Social Innovation as a startup advisor to try to get an understanding of, like, okay, how do these organizations operate? How do the leaders in innovation for Canada make it work? How do they make it happen? So I got in and learned, and I was very fortunate that I get to talk to hundreds of startups a year now. Last year was over 300 that I got to talk to and learn about their story, and trends start to develop when you start to see enough data points, right? So I was seeing these trends and understanding how the mechanics of an ecosystem work, and what's the same, what's different between startups. I also was able to find this amazingly talented entrepreneur that I was talking about earlier, Morgan, who runs MySealTech, and join her as a board member and get focus in on, okay, how do I develop advice giving skills? How do I help entrepreneurs specifically, and how do I help them communicate what they want to do? I have learned as much from Morgan as I hope she's learned from me, and it's been awesome to work with her and to be able to grow, watch her company grow. So spaces and all this different side of things. And then I also spent time with the Chemical Angel Network, learning what it looks like to be an angel investor and to go through that process and how financing works from that side. And now I've spent a lot of time in the VC world as I'm trying to raise a venture capital firm for early stage Chemtech startups. So I tried to get my toes in every part of the ecosystem so that I could have empathy for each part, because I was led by people who didn't have empathy for me, and I see how hard it is to be a leader that way.
Mhm. So what do you think makes Kingston special as a possible ecosystem for clean technology or deep tech?
Well, let's pull it back a second. The clean tech side of things is really important. Why are we focusing on clean tech, right? So I have this dichotomy side of things. Like let's look at what the regional Waterloo was doing, and compare that now because it's a great story. Regional Waterloo had enormous economic impact on the way that Canada's technology sectors moved, and ultimately the regional development of that entire corridor between Toronto and Waterloo. This clearly demonstrated in that app economy I was talking about in post 2008, because it was a time that startup ecosystem thrived by standardizing and facilitating the commercialization of software technologies, right? But as I've been talking about this entire time, 14 years later, the technology trends have completely changed. Everything's different. If we follow where the capital is being invested, there's two sectors that come up. We're in modern medtech and impactful clean technologies. We're seeing climate crisis everywhere, and we're seeing the effects of not having sufficient or capable medical technologies because of COVID. So those are key problems and fundamental issues of my generation. And this new wave of innovation, clean tech is rising, and I've been very excited to see, and proud to see my hometown and where I've chosen to make my life, Kingston. I've seen it rise to support it. So why is it special? Kingston has a wild history of innovation that not a lot of people know. It starts in the beginning or middle of World War II, about 80 years ago. Two companies, Novelis and DuPont, built their national research and development facilities in Kingston because they were supported by a great talent pool from Queen's University that has only grown since. Fortunately, there was a technology boom that came, 40s, 50s, 60s. This technology boom really abused the power of chemistry. We developed technologies, like plastics, fossil fuels. You read PFAS, the plumes. There's countless stories of why that time of history in chemistry was developing technologies because we could without thinking about their sustainability. It's my philosophy that it's clean tech or chemistry ultimately that got us into this climate mess, and now it's chemistry that can get us out. So it's chemistry is clean tech. And the next chapter of Chemtech commercialization is going to be led in the city. We just have the highest density of programs and people and willingness to do this than any city in the country right now. Greentech Canada, KPM-Accelerate bring 40 years combined of process development experience to the table. I mean, Tim Clark, the technology leader of Canada, quite literally wrote the book on chemtech startups. Together with the support of other Canadian innovation leaders, Kingston's startup ecosystem has a unique opportunity here to usher our country into a global leadership position. We can do this by cleaning up chemistry and standardizing the commercialization process as the world moves away from the app economy into a commercialization economy.
So how are you planning to do this?
Well, it's a big, hairy goal, right? So nobody can do this alone. And so there's a pretty big group of us that are proposing to create a center for chemtech innovation. That is supported by two new pieces of infrastructure. We're talking about early stage for early stage ventures. We will create a venture studio or incubator with specialized lab space and maker space that will be a project led by Green Center. For the growth stage ventures and for technology scale up, the piece that we're missing in Canada and in North America, we will establish a world-class commercialization hub that's designed for piloting with purpose-built infrastructure. This new infrastructure will add to the existing ecosystem that's been built in collaboration with stakeholders from across the country. I've already alluded to some of them. Two of our partners, Foresight Canada and the Centre for Social Innovation, will provide the startup development that is required as some of the largest clean tech organizations in Canada. A partnership with the Queen's University founder ecosystem will provide, a motivated and entrepreneurial talent pool. And of course, a partnership with Fractal, I see as a way to facilitate the community and to help us lead innovation that way. You guys have been innovating in, co-working communities through the pandemic. You survived. You proved out that you're doing cool stuff and that it's worth it. Let's translate that and bring it into what's happening at a broader scale. So Kingston's clean tech ecosystem is the story of many private sector organizations with one unified goal, supporting clean tech, right? Working together collaboratively in a supportive environment. The city of Kingston has been amazing. And of course, their economic development organization has always contributed to this. And so, I speak with hundreds of startups a year, and they've all outlined that they need something like this now. They don't, we invest in startups in Canada, and they develop, they run out of the resources, and they go south, they go to the States. So for us, it's about building up equity in our nation. And this is something I wish I had when I was a founder. So for every stakeholder, we're all working really hard to bring this together in the next 2 or 3 years.
So what does the future of clean tech innovation look like in Canada?
Big question. When everything is said and done, when this 2 to 3 year goal comes to fruition, Canada will be able to abundantly create new clean tech ventures by leveraging a collaborative commercialization economy. The relationships that we're forming now, the shared resources that we're forming now, they're critical to our growth. And now, what I've used this term commercialization economy a couple of times. What I'm referring to is all of the active organizations and service providers that generate value through venture creation. So if we all together put forward a robust national effort, Canada will have the infrastructure to support ventures through every stage of their business and technology development. For startups and for founders like I was, this means a bridge over the valley of death that was created by founders for founders. And for Canada and our ecosystem, this movement leads us to a position of leadership globally in clean tech, and puts the $8 billion of investment that we've been, trying to put through for the next 7 years through Canada's Strategic Innovation Fund, SIF. We put that to work and operationalize the political will that we have and the monetary investment that we're putting in. This standard model of commercialization is being created in Kingston, and we want to replicate it everywhere. So you asked me, what do I see as a future of clean tech in Canada? I see a future where we take the lessons learned from the development of this Chemtech hub, and we use it to help foster similar hubs in organically growing technology sectors across the Canada. In the next decade, I honestly believe that we will help every aspect of clean tech commercialization, from carbon capture to e-mobility, smart grids, and ag tech. They'll all be supported by world-leading infrastructure, the thing that's required to get clean tech over the hurdle. This bottom-up approach to technology commercialization, why are we trying to do this? We're trying to, save the world here a little bit. We want to see cool technologies make the world a better place. We want to build our nation's equity. We want to create jobs. Venture creation is one of the only ways that I can see the revitalization of an economy. We saw that in 2008. It's happening again. And when we leave this pandemic eventually, and it becomes an endemic, we will need the same type of job creation, the same type of spark in the country's economy. And I want to see us all help bring the most impactful technologies to market, really.
Well, you're one of the most impressive people I've met, regardless of your age. The fact that you're working on things that are so needed and you're passionate about it, it gives us a lot of hope that your generation will lead us into the future. So I'm excited about what you're doing, and I think by me opening this space and getting to see people like you, it's a gift. It's a pleasure that I have. So I just love supporting you any way I can, and you're just doing a great job.
Thanks, man. Ultimately, we just want to help save the world. I say it nonchalantly, but that is the goal. And to me, to us, Kingston, innovation in Kingston means innovation for Canada. And this future that I'm talking about, it's so big, it's so complicated. No one person's ever going to do it alone. So it's a future we can all build together.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're the guy that's going to pull it together.
Well, you're being too kind.
Well, we're kind of near the end. I don't know if we have any questions from the community.
Yeah, I see a couple of questions. I'd love to work through them.
Okay, which ones are you seeing? Yeah. Great achievement. Thanks for your valuable information you shared, Sebastian. From your point of view, when's the right time to start first round fundraising in a startup at seed stage?
Okay, good question. This is challenging because as I talked about, if you screw up that timing, it's really difficult to recover from it. So for Chemtech and Greentech startups, I'll speak to that because that's what I know, and I would be talking out of my butt if I was talking about anything else. The right time is when you understand your chemistry, or understand the tech and all the risk factors associated. If you can communicate your technology in terms of money, you fully understand your tech. If you still have questions about, I don't know, what's a good example that's pretty broad. So let's take, for example, if you're a recycler and you're recycling wind turbine blades. If you still have questions about how much you can actually recycle from a theoretical perspective and the scale that you can operate on, then you're not ready to raise a seed round, because there's no way you can take on dilutive capital and have any confidence that you're going to do a good job for the investors who are trusting you with their money. Normally angel investors at that point. So you're not hurting some big pool of money, you're hurting an individual. So when you look at your tech, you understand it in and out. You don't need to know everything about it. You don't need to know where it's going, but you need to understand the fundamentals to be able to stand on some really solid ground. And when you have that, then you can start thinking about your seed round. I expect you have 1 or 2 full-time employees at that point, or that you're full-time founders working on it, paid or unpaid. Let's be real here. We're startups. There's not a lot of money in that. So if you're able to do that, then you'll be ready.
I don't know if we have any more questions. Is there anything else that you want to articulate, Sebastian? Or I know you've covered a lot of ground.
We got some more.
Oh, good.
Kaylee just asked, must-have apps or tools to manage everything. I feel pretty fortunate. I have ADHD, so it in itself is a bit of a superpower. I would never managing something that's going on, or managing a schedule just doesn't work for me. I just kind of go with the flow. I plan incessantly, put it in a Google Calendar, and pray to God I get everything. And if not, I put structure around me, people who are detail oriented, to make sure that I can share and collaborate and share the load. So I don't know. Do you have a must-have app that has a face on it and that's a person? Because I have a couple of those. I call them operators. They're awesome.
Mm-hmm. Tell us more about the importance of validation. You mentioned spending a long time understanding what is needed.
Okay, validation. Validation is in chemistry and clean tech is the word that is most abused. You see in pitches everywhere, we have validated technology, or we validated this through, like, sometimes yes, most of the time almost never is that the truth or the real deal, because as entrepreneurs you spend so much time focused on your one thing that you forget to look at the bigger picture, ask your customers enough questions. And if you don't ask your customers enough questions, you go down this rabbit hole of engineering for engineering's sake, and forget to pull it back and be like, oh crap, what am I actually building? You lose sight of the bigger picture. So validation, regardless of what tools or methods or technology that you have, needs to be done by a third party so that you can trust it. And it needs to be done in collaboration with or with feedback from your customer. If you have customer engagement, if you have an understanding of what's happening and the mechanics of your industry, then you're pretty good. You're set as far as being able to go to raise a seed round or later stage. Validation also means knowing what you don't know and knowing where the gaps in your understanding are and what you need to do next to figure them out. So not just a approach of knowing everything, because you're not going to know everything when you go into a seed round or a round A or even a round B. I've met startups in their round C of fundraising that are still trying to figure out themselves out. So knowing what you don't know, knowing what you already know, and clearly defining it around some boundaries allows you to validate, put parameters around your validation and qualify it, so that it can be actionable insight.
I have a question for you, Sebastian. In your role at KPM-Accelerate, you're looking at companies considering making an investment. What's your process? And tell us a little bit more about a company that's going to get an investment from KPM-Accelerate, what it looks like.
So yeah, we're building out our capabilities to invest in companies through a fund that we're still raising and hoping to close in the short term. But what's the process look like? It's a deeper version of due diligence. Due diligence in the private equity sector and in general in the startup sector, sometimes a bit razor thin. We go deeper than most startups or other firm or VCs. Sorry, not startups. We go deeper with the startups than most VCs can go because we understand the chemistry. So that's the first thing we look at. Is your chemistry real? We do that using tools like TechnoEconomic Analysis. We do that by asking, KPM's been around for 20 years and developing cool tech for multinationals. So we have an amazing client list that is fairly responsive that we can ask, listen, is this technology something you would even want? What are the boundaries of this? What does the market look like? So we leverage our experience that way. And we have amazing staff that have been developing technologies everywhere. In every sector. So we leverage their understanding and their expertise to be able to quantify and qualify the magnitude of impact, the magnitude of investment potential around the finances, and the magnitude of scientific innovation. Once we have all those pretty well understood, then it's about a meeting with the founder. Do we align? Can I work with you? Can I be, we don't have to be buddy, but I need to know that you're a real person. And that I can get behind you and be proud that I'm working with you, right? Morgan is a perfect example. It's awesome to work with her and to lift her up because she's just a real human at the base of it. And she's not doing it. She's not doing her company to be something. She's making her company happen because she wants to do something, right? That distinction between being someone, being Elon Musk, and doing, creating companies that go to the moon. The two different things, right? So focusing on that. So there's the technical side, and then of course the person side, and then that's where we can have a discussion about being able to invest.
You have a very important question from your mom.
Oh, my mom's on this. Awesome.
And you have to answer your mom. You probably should say hi to your mom too. But
hi, Mom.
Sebastian, can you share about the journey, about the value of a techno-economic assessment to startups trying to get how it relates to seed funding / validating, etc.?
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit. Thanks for listening, Mom. No, yeah, talked that a little bit. The techno-economic analysis is a great tool because once you go through the process, you come out with all the things that in somebody with a CFA, a chartered financial analyst that can make investment decisions, can grab into. I have a co-founder, Brendan, who is a CPA, and now he's getting his CFA, and he's a 23-year-old that has been managing like small private equity or a public equity fund while doing like 2 other jobs. He's a crazy guy. It's awesome. But he always was like, Sebastian, tell me the numbers. Tell me the numbers. I don't care about the science. He did, but he's like, the science is cool, but if you can't break it down to the numbers, you can't explain it. So the techno-economic analysis is a tool to be able to get to those numbers: capex, opex, revenue potential, risk, and then you can use all of those to do financial analysis and understand what a potential balance sheet looks like through things like pro forma financials, but also to be able to do that discounted cash flow like I was talking about. And discounted cash flow is just to be able to put a value on the potential future cash flow of whatever your business is generating, and you need certain financials around that. So that's a tool so that when you go to an investor, you're not like, you see this on Dragon's Den all the time, right? They come to the investor, they say the Dragons, oh, we're worth $5 million, and the Dragons are like, you're worth nothing. Like, what are you talking about? So that disconnect between valuation, a perceived valuation from the startup, and the actual valuation of the technology, that can sour relationships really quickly. So if you come in with actual knowledge, connecting your science to your money, then you're golden. It's a really good communication tool. So there's that side of things. And then there's, from the technology development side of things, you can use that model to figure out where the highest risks are. And then it gives you a hierarchy of variables that you need to validate and what your actual next steps are. So, if you're developing a process that recycles oil and water, you're thinking about the flow rates, you're thinking about the efficiency of the actual filter itself, you're thinking about the composition of the oil and water coming in and coming out. And then you have to be able to look, what do I focus on? There's like 12 variables here. What is the most important one to focus on and to optimize for? That process get teased out, those variables get teased out through the techno-economic development or techno-economic analysis.
I don't think we have any more questions coming in. So unless there's something else you want to say, Sebastian, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so fortunate. Right. I was 17 when I had an idea for a company, and I was 18 when I started it. Didn't know what I was doing, didn't have a clear pathway. There was no real roadmap. And there still isn't a roadmap for my own personal development. And so to be able to support founders the way I wish I had means a lot. And it's been really exciting to see the impact that being on the ecosystem side of things has. Because when you're a founder and working on a startup, you are a vehicle to make change in one very specific problem. But if the thing that you are problem solving for on the ecosystem side of things is to make sure that other people can do better, if you're the enabler, then it's really rewarding, because I hope that, if one thing that I touch helps an entrepreneur change the world, then I have done my job right, and I'm happy. So yeah, I'm just fortunate.
Cool. We actually had a couple questions. Morgan just gave you a cool shout out.
Nice. Thanks, Vern.
And then Norman said, Sebastian, from your perspective, why would you encourage a startup to set up in Kingston at KPM-Accelerate /Fractal as opposed to other cities like Ottawa, Toronto, or Montreal? Interested to learn more about this from your perspective.
Yeah. So why Kingston over the bigger cities? you're in a smaller city, and especially in a city like Kingston, as I kind of talked about before, the ecosystem here is so rich in its history. You have the ability to leverage a talent pool that has been innovating and developing technologies for 80 years. Like what? I don't know a place where you can do that, have it be so concentrated, be able to afford to live, right? Like it's a city where you can still get a reasonable sized house for under $500,000. You have amenities, all the amenities of a big city, highest number of restaurants per capita. So I can live here. I can have a life beyond working here. And I can access the really cool parts of the physical infrastructure that is just hard to build or access anywhere else. In Toronto, yeah, you might be able to raise capital faster. You might have access to a larger network, a larger ecosystem, but you feel smaller in that larger ecosystem. You are one part in the larger side of things. So getting the momentum to be able to grow is really hard. I found, coming from Waterloo, Silicon Valley of the North, like it's hard to grow and be able to be relevant in a pool of startups that there's infinite, right? And, things like movements like the Eastern Ontario Innovation Corridor, those are key indicators of the kind of collaboration and the kind of resource sharing that is happening in cities like Kingston, the cities that are smaller than the big metropolises of Canada. It's exciting. I think if you come to Kingston in the next couple of years and try to develop your company, you will ride a wave of innovation, and it will be easier. You're not going to have to fight the undercurrent caused by the wave that you missed.
Cool. We got one less, but I don't know. I think it's just an acknowledgement. So I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for thank you for everything. It's so exciting to see what you're working on, and you give us hope. You give us all hope that we're going to work towards a better future and a better planet, which I think the world wants. And so it's going to be exciting to watch what you build.
Thank you so much for having me. And honestly, none of this would be possible if I didn't have some people around me that took a chance and believed in me. And I believe in the ecosystem, and I want to give it a chance, and I want to bring people together to do cool stuff. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So this Startup Grind was brought to you by Spark Center in partnership with Launch Lab. Our next Startup Grind is taking place on Thursday, February 24th. It's being put on in partnership with Queen's University. Stay tuned to social media for more details and to register. Lastly, Spark Center puts out a quarterly magazine called The Spark Business and Innovation Magazine. And if you'd like to receive a free copy or print of their upcoming spring 2022 issue, be sure to subscribe now at thesparkmagazine.ca. Now it's time for networking. If you wish to join us, you can navigate to the section by clicking the icon on the left of your screen. You'll be paired up with one person at a time for 3 minutes. You can use this time to get to know each other, and you'll have the option to extend the session if desired. Once the time is up, press ready, and Hopin will automatically move to the next person. Click the connect button if you'd like to virtually exchange business cards and add a person to your network. Thanks, and see you there.